Imagine coming home from the bar. You just get done drinking. You're ready for bed. And you get in bed and you hear this crash. You see this big thing. You don't know what it is. Could be a blob. Could be the Hulk. You don't know. You look up and he looks sick. You don't know what's going on. Next thing you know, he lunges at you, bites you, and you don't know what's going to happen after that. Welcome to another episode of Jonathan's Room. And that intro that I explained was kind of the intro on Zombie Waltz, written by Lynn E. And this is how he normally explains it to other people. So, Lenny, did I do okay on that intro?
Oh yeah, that sounded great.
So, what got you interested in writing about zombies? Where did this concept come from?
Well, I've always loved zombies, but I originally didn't want to write about zombies. I actually said that I would never write about zombies, werewolves, or vampires. And I came up with the idea for the Zombie Waltz in about 2005. I was in Berlin, Germany, and I just imagined what it would be like to be bitten by a zombie. I think I might have just seen Land of the Dead, might have just come out, or something like that, either while I was in Germany or Holland, or maybe right before I went to Europe. So zombies were on my mind. And I'd been, at the time toying with kind of an apocalyptic thriller and didn't know exactly how I wanted to take it. And then I got that scene playing in my mind, and after that I was like, okay, maybe I could do zombies.
And how long did it take you to write this book? The concept originally came up. You originally came up with the concept in 2005. How long did it take you
Yeah, I
to?
didn't start writing it right away. I did do some. There was some pre-writing that I can show you that probably dates back. Some of it as early as 2005, 2006.
Right.
Fast forward to about 2012, and I had just finished my first book, my first rough draft of full-length book. I had handwritten, and I finished that and decided I would never do that again. And so I started wanting to type something, and I kicked around a few different ideas, and I came up with this kind of like what you just did, a little bit more first-person oriented. I described it as being myself. So, and to my roommate and friend, Josh Cromwell, I described basically the opening scene to Zombie Waltz, a lot like what you had just done for the intro of this show.
Mm-hmm.
And ad-lib, but the basic idea. And he was so taken with it that he at one point jumped in his chair and said, "Did this really happen to you?" Because he was just, and of course not, I've never been bit by a zombie, but at that moment, it was very organic. I didn't feel like he was faking that reaction at all, or overstating it. I felt like he was really drawn in, and it seemed to me like a cool concept. And this was in late 2012, so I started working on the original rough draft for Zombie Waltz probably December, maybe late November 2012. And then I had a Facebook page. It was named something else at the time, Mal. And I decided on a quirk to put my first couple of pages. It was the first little scene
Right.
that you just pretty much described, that same scene, onto that Facebook page. And that's where it started.
And so from the comments and some of the things that your friends were saying about those pages, it just built from there, correct?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer. It was my writing page. I had done a few short stories or scenes or whatever, and kicked a few other ideas around on there. Done a little bit of low rent artwork on there. My son helped me with some of it when he was like 5. I think he was 5. And then, I put this on there, and I have been trying to garner likes and get people's attention with this page because I was interested in getting into the world of professional writing. And this story, this one particular scene, really caught a lot of people's attention, and so I was fueled by their interest and wanted to write them another scene to put it on there so that they could continue reading the story. Friends of mine that are old friends, my mother, my aunt, at some point, a few of my other family members, were all reading this story on Facebook and other people. And so I kept adding to it, and eventually I had basically a full-length rough draft in a few months, and decided I was going to take that story down at that point and start editing it and trying to make a book out of it, because I really felt strongly about that story, and that it was amazing putting it on Facebook like that, because I gotten so much feedback from it that I already had kind of a little following or interest in it from some of my friends. So it was really cool that I was able to, and I got a lot of useful feedback on it as well.
That is good. That. And just to provide a little insight on Lynn E's writing, I'm going to read the little back expert here because you came up with this as well, correct?
Oh, yeah, that's mine as well, yeah.
Okay. In the end, the inhumanity of it all is the worst part of the zombie apocalypse. Walking away from or having to destroy a friend or loved one is truly terrible. But what is the alternative? Can't talk tonight. Being bitten is a new mark of the beast. Taboo extremus or serial number tattooed in flesh. No matter who they were before, how important or affluent the bitten are, just lost, useless dweebs. But what if you were the one bitten? And just reading that just gives me goosebumps, because that is a heart and soul and the whole point behind this book. And
yeah, I think it really captures it. Sorry, go ahead.
Les is the main character, and he gets bitten by the zombie. Like you said, I described it well in the beginning, and that's exactly what happened to Les. And he gets bitten, and he actually survives the bite, which is actually kind of a unique storyline, because there's not many stories where you get bitten by a zombie and survive.
I don't know if I would classify it as unique, but I think it's definitely the road less traveled. It's usually pretty standard fare that anyone who's bitten in a zombie story, they die, they become a zombie, even if they're a main character. And I don't think that that's, it was something I did on purpose. It was never an afterthought. Or like I just wanted to keep this character alive, so I decided that he was immune. It's definitely part of the story. It wouldn't be Zombie Waltz if Les hadn't been bitten and survived. So yeah, you're right. That is the heart and the soul of the story in a way. Is that act, that thing? It makes the whole story, and it changes everything in Les's world and pretty much the world of everyone he comes into contact with from then on.
And then he meets Faith, and she is a doctor in training, an intern, correct?
Yeah, she's an internist. She's basically a doctor in her first year of practice, where they're still being watched in school and everything. So she's she's through medical school and all that stuff, but she's just, just starting out as a doctor.
Right. And she has the one thing that I really like about this book is you focus on less, but then you turn around, take take a small break, and then you go to Faith, and you kind of explain some of her storyline, which was really really exciting to me, and it was really refreshing because you don't see too much of that in a novel.
Yeah, you see some of it, but the perspective changing. When I first wrote the story, it was all from Les's perspective, and later on in the story, way after the space scenes in the beginning that you're talking about, I had decided to add another perspective, just kind of on a whim, and I liked it too. It was a nice break. I think it gives a view of my world from, so where you can see less in the world and you can see more of the world that he's in, and it makes it more real, I think, in my opinion, and I really enjoy doing it that way, so I'm glad you liked it.
Um, and I wanted to kind of talk and kind of ask about the roommates because you bring them in for a little bit. Are you gonna bring them back in other novels, or are you just gonna leave them be?
I promise you this, Jonathan, I forget no characters in my story. So if you're a reader out there and you're reading along and you're like, well, that character just kind of came and went, I really hope I see them again. I wouldn't, don't worry, fear not. I've forgotten nobody. I don't really want to tell you. It's a surprise. So you'll see.
Okay. I was curious about the roommates, and then
Mm-hmm.
another character. I'm gonna talk about her a little bit later, and I think you have a pretty good idea of who I'm wanting to bring up.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so.
I wanted to tell you this before I forget. Um, I was talking to Richard Brookman the other day, and for the
Little
viewers out
comic
there
pop
who,
library shout out.
yeah, for the people who don't know who Richard Brookman is, he is our boss at Comic Pop Library. It's a podcast that we both co-host. I've kind of branched out from Comic Pop to doing this, and I'm still doing Comic Pop. But I was telling him the other night that I was dreaming of zombies. And I said, I don't know if it was because I was watching something with zombies or I just wanted to read Lenny's book. So
Yeah.
it might have been a little bit of both. I don't know.
I've had some dreams about that book too. A few.
So
It got kind of in my skin.
it was. I just thought I would share that with you for a minute and let you know that you know
That's fine.
that did happen, and then I received the book, and I was just like, yes. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a refreshing change, and it was fun to read. It was a fun read for me. Um, now, there were two characters that stood out to me the most in this book. One of them was Ramirez, because um, in 2009, 2010, I don't remember the exact year, I left for basic training, and up there, when I got there, I met several people, but one of my closest battle buddies' name was Patrick Ramirez. So when I read about Ramirez, who was a soldier in this book, it just kind of hit close to home to me. Can you kind of tell me your thought processes behind Ramirez?
Yeah, sure. Ramirez was, again, he wasn't an afterthought character. He was very much a planned part of the story. I had actually written other scenes, kind of a backstory for him, but it didn't. I ended up cutting it for the length, and the only scene that got left in was that final scene with him. Yeah, I really like Ramirez. I think part of it is the interesting thing about him is that he was the first living person that Les and Faith ran into after, you know, they decided to venture kind of out of the house. And the other really interesting thing about Ramirez that I really enjoyed doing him was that he was a soldier and he was also a bite victim. And, you know, we kind of talked about it earlier that Les was bitten, and you read the intro where Les was, well, not Les, but where it talks about, you know, the people that are bitten are kind of lost and useless. And I think that in the real world, if something like this were to happen, people would very much believe that anyone bitten was a goner, and in many cases would shoot them and not even feel bad about it, because they would believe that they were going to be a zombie and that they were putting them out of not only their misery, but possibly saving somebody else in the future. So there would be a lot of murder in the sake of you're a zombie or you're going to be a zombie. And that's something that I really wanted to point out, because my character is bitten, but also you know, he survived the bite wound, but, you know, to our knowledge, there's no way of saying whether or not Ramirez would have survived the bite wound or not. He was bitten on the arm. It was pretty much a superficial wound. He was sweaty and described as looking feverish, maybe, but that's still not proof. And that's something that, you know, the book kind of goes into several times, and it's something that I think is an interesting point about any kind of zombie apocalypse story. And I wanted it to be as realistic as possible. And I thought, in the real world, people know what zombies are. They know what's supposed to happen. There's tons of lore on zombies. So people would react in ways that they have been trained to react, and that this would be a very real problem, especially if there was a possibility, like in Les's case, that you maybe won't die from the zombie bite, at least as far as we know.
Right. And then the other one, and he was my all-time favorite character, and what happened to him was very, very unfortunate, but I could see where it would happen in a zombie novel. And that was I call him the hillbilly, and I might be completely off basis by calling him that, but I call him the hillbilly, and that was Levi.
Levi Reinke, yes. I love me some Levi. He was a great character. You know, Levi was definitely a good guy, and I think that's it's unfortunate that in this story a lot of good people end up in very sticky situations just trying to do the right thing, and he's definitely one of them.
Right.
Yeah, I love the way he talked. I love his attitude and also his compassion. I thought he was a really neat character, and it was, you know, I tried with all of my characters to imagine them as real people as much as possible. So I imagined what his wife would look like and what his children would look like. I don't know that I wrote him this way, but in my mind, I don't know if I ever used the word, but in my mind, he's a black man.
Right.
So when you said hillbilly, I was like, well, that's not exactly the way I intended it. But I mean, you know, his speech is somewhat different from the other people's, and I wanted to make it more like jive. But, you know, I wanted him to be very sincere to who he was and talk very naturally. And he wouldn't be very...
and see,
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, hillbilly isn't. That's one interpretation I'll accept. Hillbilly works. But yeah, he was a fun character. It was kind of sad to see him go like that.
Yeah, and like I said, he was my favorite character, and I kind of would have liked to see him progress a little bit more in the story. But we're going to take a small break, and we will be back in a few minutes to talk a little bit more about Zombie Waltz. So hang on tight, and we will be back with part 2. Maybe.